May it please the court. Why do I have to say please the court? I'm the president. You should be saying, sir, please speak. I have to say, please the court, And by the way, you're not so tall, Not a lot of people know this, but you had to walk up a bunch of stairs to get up to your bench. I'm actually very tall, a lot taller than you. But that's okay. May it please the court. I'll say it if you need me to say it. I am Donald J. Trump, and I am representing myself. They call that, it's called prose. And if you're nice to me, maybe I'll grab you by the prose, because when you're a presidential defendant accused of espionage, they let you do it by the prose. Now, I'm going to put the system on trial. Okay? You're out of order. This whole place is out of order. And you can't handle the truth. No, excuse me. You can't handle the truth. You can't. Okay? And you certainly can't handle the truth social. Okay? I would rather just have you say thank you, sir, and be on your way. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to. Okay? And what's that? I'm in the wrong courtroom? Oh, what's this? Oh, this is divorce court? Melatonin. I didn't even think you could speak. Well, she's very sneaky. She learned something from me. So, strong prenup. I rest my case.
Stand up.
From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to treat those possessed by Satan-induced facial burns. And now, the podcast host who thinks 666 is just another ho-hum number in the pie chart, Pete Dominic.
Thank you, Pete Co., you sick bastard, and thank you, J.L. Covan, for the comedy up top. Always great. Go follow him and watch those videos at YouTube. And that's right, everybody, 666 episode of Stand Up, and I cannot do it without you and your support. Thank you so much for taking me with you in your ear holes today, wherever you are. I am very happy to have you listening, and I'm sorry I said taking me with you in your ear holes. That was gross, and I apologize. I have got four big-time guests, brilliant guests joining me on today's conversation. You know and you love Wajahat Ali, and hopefully you know and love Virginia Heffernan as well. Two brilliant people, brilliant conversations, and you have to listen to all of both of them. You just have to. You don't want to miss a word of either of these guests on today's show. They're smart, they're funny, they're original, they're passionate, sincere, and kind. I really love them. I hope that you will. I know that you will as well. Thank you to everybody who responded to my little anti-car dealership rant, including one gentleman who works at a car dealership. I want to talk more about cars and interview some mechanics and try to understand how people get ripped off or taken for a ride, if you will, and so many other things that I want to be talking about here on the program as well. Who would you like me to be talking to? Great guest still coming up on this week's show. Bill B. in D.C., David Rothkopf, Dr. Aaron Carroll, Amy Westervelt, who I've been trying to get on for a long time. Also, Andrew Spar, the Florida Education Association president on all things Florida and teachers, and the great Anya Kamenetz, one of the best journalists covering education, comes on as well to talk about her new book about what children lost during the 2 years of COVID. So great guests still coming up this week, and more will be joining me during this week. So more exciting, interesting, informative conversations coming your way each and every day here on Stand Up with Pete Dominic Daily. That's right. Monday through Friday, I'm here. Maybe even Saturday this week. I've had so many great conversations. I want to leak them out over on the weekend. And don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And thank you to Indeed.com for sponsoring us all of this week. Indeed.com/standup. Right now. Check that out. And now let's get to those guests, shall we? I mean, stop beating around the bush, Pete. You don't have anything really of great value to say or share. I mean, by the time you start talking about the news, you realize everybody already knows, is what people told me. I was going to talk about the primary results because I live in New York. You already know. You don't care. Let me just get to it. I have these two great guests who I had almost hour-long conversations with both, and I think you're going to love them. What a unique, great guy Wajahat Ali is, and I so think, as always, he just hits home runs. We had a real fun, interesting, and important conversation. But before that, I've got the absolutely brilliant Virginia Heffernan, who is back by popular demand. She is the former host of Trumpcast. She just wrapped the This Is Critical podcast. She's got a new podcast that's coming out. She is an author. She is a columnist. She contributes to the LA Times and so much more. She writes for Wired magazine. She has her own Substack, and I want you to go follow her on Twitter, where she is so funny and likable and absolutely brilliant. I love talking to her, and she always is so nice to me. She's on Twitter at Page88. Go follow her. You're going to love this conversation with Virginia Heffernan that goes all over the place, and I think covers a lot of really interesting and important issues. And I just love her insights and her honesty and her vulnerability and her thoughtfulness. So I'm going to stop talking. Here we go. Virginia Heffernan. Let's do it. All right, there she is, one of my favorite people. One of the people, when you ask her to come on and she says yes, you get like I get like a child. I'm very excited. Virginia Heffernan, it is great to see you. I'm so happy that I get to ask you questions and be in a kind of a conversation with you if I can hold my own.
Pete, seeing you in your shed, even virtually, is fantastic.
We were just talking. You have a lot of thoughts about workspace, specifically mine. Do you want to share anything? I mean, what about you? You're such an amazing writer. Does it matter where you write or what space you're working in?
Well, first I'll say something about your awesome space.
Thank you.
It looks basically like it should be on green screen. It's so perfect for you. You know, it might be a virtual background for all I know.
I love that.
I know it's tiny, but I have the extreme privilege, supreme privilege of waiting in it because I was a few minutes before you got there, and it was such a nice place to sit. It was just it's got books, it's got wood. There's a little bed.
What do you think it smells like? Because it has a specific smell that I did on purpose.
Well, I think green rooms all smell like donuts, just because I remember the real ones. But I think
I met you in a green room, actually.
I know, it's great. I think it's got to smell like cedar and like wood oil.
You are
right?
You are the winner. What do we have for her, fake producer? We've got we have a slightly used pillow. That's what you win.
As long as it comes with some cedar chips, I'm down.
That's right. I should be clear. Virginia does have a solid audio connection. She and no person has ever really joined me in the shed for real. But you were waiting virtually in this, what I use StreamYard link. And I didn't know that people waiting could see. I thought I had to click on them. So I'm a little uncomfortable about what I may have been wearing or doing when I've walked in on other highfalutin guests.
I think whatever you did, it was exactly right. And I think it's really nice. As far as where I can work, I liked to, when I was writing colleges and paper and colleges, I like to write on the sofa with everyone around me because I just go into sort of a fugue state. I don't need a lot of silence. So I sort of liked when they were walking through, but I am, when Richard, my I guess now husband, partner, fiance, comes into a room and I'm working, I cannot hear a word he says. I'm like Tony Soprano when he died. You know how David Chase was really into everything goes silent when you die, when you're shot. I'm like that. I can't hear human voices. I'm just in a world of my own making.
That's interesting. World. I'm the exact opposite. And I think it's because to some extent of being in radio and having headphones on and then editing my own stuff. Like I hear everything. I have a problem with that. But that's good if you can work that way. Cause I'm sure you can work just as well with silence in the middle of the woods, which I know you like to take a typewriter into the forest.
Yes, I do. Actually, my son, who just left for college, really does like to take a typewriter into the forest. And that's why he's gone to college on this crazy ranch. Only 10 people in his class, way out in Death Valley. He decided he wanted no people around him, essentially.
Well, you tweeted about your son leaving for college. It's that time of year where a lot of parents, obviously kids are going back to school, but a lot of parents are becoming empty nesters or they've got one child left at home. Either way, they're experiencing this. And you were kind of, you're public about a lot of stuff. And I asked you if I could ask you, so what's it like for you? Because you just have the one son, is my understanding.
No, I have two. So I'm a half empty nester.
I didn't realize that. I did not realize that. Okay.
One of the other way. Yeah, I've got a little daughter too. She's 12. She's fantastic. My son left for college during the pandemic. He decided that he just wanted to listen to LPs and sit, read books, and then, like you, go out in the country and work in the garden. That combo, books and whatever. When he was 11 or something, I found his list for life, like his checklist of what he wanted to do. And it was go to college abroad, parentheses, Oxford, ? Didn't know he'd heard of it. Then get married and write in the North until dead. Write in the North until dead. So he wanted to write somewhere in the North. I don't know where that is, Canada. I picture it like Glenn Gould territory, that piano player that wore fingerless gloves. I think that might be Ben's hero. But anyway, he is not in the North. He chose, because he was so besotted in the pandemic with this very rugged, kind of masculine, solo Thoreau life. He chose a college with a deceptively bland name of Deep Springs, which was all male till very recently. They take 10 or 11 students a year. And they work there. So it is free to me, but they do 30 hours of work a week, including castrating bull calves for them, killing gophers. He has been doing dishes for all 50 members of the community every day for a few hours after 3 meals. It's a lot of work. So their pillars are labor, scholarship, self-government, and you have to commit to a life of service. It's 2 years. Most people transfer, but some people go on to be, make horseshoes, or, how Generation Z just doesn't really want to, or some of them are wanting to get away from the internet, and just do these makery things. So he's learning to butcher meat now. It's very trippy and cool.
What a fascinating and unique and original thing, especially for someone of his generation, which I don't make generalizations about generations I know nothing about. So I generally stick to my own, but he's your son. I mean, I have daughters, but they're certainly not that. As a matter of fact, like the whole time you're talking about this college and your son, I'm wondering what went wrong here with my kids.
Oh, really? On the contrary. I mean, he left a little early. He hadn't finished. He never finished high school. He hasn't finished high school yet. He might do a GED or transfer some credits back. And his eagerness to get away, just like a Go West young man, a 49er, my coastal Victorian stay inside, mom over here. There was one day where I realized I was curled up in fetal position looking at a fetal ultrasound of Ben. So it was all fetal here. As I was anticipating him leaving, I will say for anyone facing this, that's ever since he got there, it's the right thing. Kids should leave home, and we've been preparing them to leave home. And as much as it hurts in the beginning and you want to put bubble wrap around them, it is amazing to see someone light out and seek their fortune. And he writes letters. They don't have much internet. And his letters are they're about like getting lost in Death Valley, getting lost in the Eastern Sierras. And, they're just very ruminative. And he's just had a lot of time to think. And he's made some close friends and friends he would never have met here. A wonderful woman from the Smoky Mountains who'd never been on a plane, still hasn't been on a plane. She drove out there, and she can just do anything. She's one of those people that
His
can tell.
Age?
Oh yeah. Well, you can start anytime from 16 to 25. So he's 16, and I think the oldest student is 21 in his class. So it's diverse, but I think she finished high school, unlike Ben. Yeah.
Was that a thing? Like, was that an issue that, I mean, he sounds like a very capable person. And, I can see someone like yourself who understands the value of education, understanding that education isn't always formal. I'm trying to wonder, was that a big Like, what did that mean that Virginia Heffernan's son didn't graduate high school?
I know. I love it. I mean, we really wanted him to get a GED. He just really wanted to get started, and Deep Springs is founded in the teens, 100 plus years ago. And it was just a time where they wanted to get people out west. They wanted to get liberal arts education for people coming to the West. So there could be like a lot of smart engineers, basically, as the West was one. And, they set up electrical companies there and stuff. So it has this interesting tradition to it, but it also is really committed to service. They didn't care if you had finished high school or not. And by the way, he will be able, I think, to transfer his credits back.
Well, why would it matter? Like, it's just like, I talked to my daughters about this. My daughter's a senior this year. We talk about it, all this kind of stuff. But why does it matter? You're the perfect person to answer this question. If you graduate from high school or college in this day and age, if an employer, if a company, if a person sees your value and sees that in his case, he could build an engine out of a match and a piece of gum and find his way out of any problem or something, does it matter as much to have this, quote, formal education, much less a high school degree, if you show great potential and value in any number of ways?
I think, the hope is, well, I don't know. He definitely, I think I mentioned to you that he put on his list of what he wants to do in his life as right in the North until dead.
Yeah.
So that's what he wants to do. I found it on a piece of paper. I don't know how far north he means. Like, we're talking Arctic Circle kind of thing, if I know him well enough. But so I don't think he has an intention of going to PricewaterhouseCoopers and being like, well, sir, here's my resume and I'm, reporting for duty. But he also doesn't seem to have enough fears about money, although because he is a 16-year-old kid, naturally he's trading crypto. So
oh, God, that's
we'll
hilarious.
see how that pays off, right? Yeah. Anyway, he's got
When is the appropriate time to check in with you about his investment or anybody about their investment? Is it a year, 2 years, tomorrow?
Yeah, I think you're right. It is very bad form to do it right now. He did code a coin for his high school before he left and left it in really good hands. Yeah, it has his high school's name on it. So maybe that one is doing all right, but he froze. It doesn't matter. Basically, right, you're right. Richard bought a truck with his profits from Dogecoin because he cashed out early. So you can always ask us how the truck is going. We wanted to turn the magical, wonderful, mystical dust of Dogecoin into a solid asset. So for the first time in anybody's life, we actually got lucky and managed to make some money in it. But nobody's in it in my house now, except Ben. You can ask him in 10 years. You can be like, how did that no high school degree, terrible investment work out for you now that you live in the Arctic Circle? I give you full permission.
I want to book him. I'm going to book him on the show for 5 years. Or how many years did you say? By the way, I know Richard a little bit, and I hope he got the electric F-150 pickup.
Oh, we did not. But I'm so glad you brought that up. We're going solar right now, and the next truck has got to be electric. I mean, do you have that one?
I got my first electric car in 2010. I got solar panels shortly after that because I was on the radio every day talking about sustainability, and I ended my show with "Be the change you want to see in the world." So I wasn't able to purchase a non-union made Toyota pickup, with a V6. So I tried to do those things, but I have a lot of weird thoughts about early adaptation to new technology, specifically when it comes to this, because I've had issues with my battery over the years. I've got my second Chevy Volt now, which I love. I just bought used, but you can go electric. You can adapt as much as you want. But if the people who are going to fix your car hate you and your car, and the dealerships hate you and your car, even though it's Motor Trend's car of the year when I bought it, like, number one. And number two, who's doing the research on lithium batteries coming back to life? My car battery died, but it still ran on gas. My vacuum cleaner lithium battery died, but I kept it. Both of them came back to life. Fully. And it's bizarre. And I don't know what to think anymore about, new technology and adapting. I have to stop being an alpha on such things and wait, I feel like.
No, I absolutely love and now have new respect. And frankly, you are a better person, I feel like, than I am for going in early. I don't know if you listen to Alex Steffen's podcast. It's called like the Snap Forward.
No.
He's a climate activist, and he says something, and I'll give it to you and your listeners briefly. It's exactly what you just said. Predatory delay is the word given to what corporations have done to stop climate legislation. He calls it that. And what he says is we have all the technology to move to renewables and to get to carbon zero. Lots of countries have done it. But because they muddied the waters and denied and whatever, that's what he calls predatory self-delay. What he thinks needs to be stopped is predatory self-delay. So the weird way, and I know listeners will identify with this, and I do too, of saying the next car is electric. The next car is a hybrid. I promise. I just need the technology to get a little better. I'm going solar, but you know what? I looked it up online. It's a little difficult. I'm not sure I have enough sun. So I'm just not going to deal with it yet. That is what I've been doing. I heard Alex Steffen say, you've got to do it now and then mentor people about doing it themselves. And that is Pete. I feel like you've been doing. I have done that.
I have done that, but I'm as this is the first time I've ever said it into a microphone. And I'm not discouraging anybody. The technology is much better on everything, from my solar panels, which are now OGs, to my Chevy Volt. But it's just it's so hard to convince people. Plus, it was still it's still expensive, too expensive for most people. A lot of people have done these things as a result of me talking about them all the time, and nothing could be more rewarding. I think the biggest impact I ever had on the radio, at least, was telling people to stop using single-use plastic. Not that your individual behavior makes that much of a difference, but just the absurdity of human beings doing such things, which, of course, your son knows all about, living in Death Valley. And so let me just quickly get back to him, because I wanted to just ask you, you're a person whose opinion I respect on everything from technology to politics to gender stuff, if I can call it that. And how do you raise a son? How does Virginia Heffernan raise a son? Because you've also been quite critical of this generation and every generation of men and gender stuff and masculinity. Like, what are we doing right or wrong raising our boys? What did you do to teach them about just gender equity, if I could, for lack of a better anything?
I hope that I haven't been critical of whole generations of men or one whole gender. It interests me. It interests me how to raise a boy, but I only have one boy and there's only one me. So I don't have like a blanket statement, but it took me a while to realize that what my son wanted, and what I think a lot of boys want, is not to be reminded of how dependent they are on their moms. So when Ben refused to get a phone, what he said was, and hold your fire on this, that he thought a smartphone, he was 11, I tried to give it to him, he's never gotten one, he still doesn't have one.
Wow.
He said he didn't want one because he thought that it was infantilizing, because I would be able to track him. He thought he wouldn't learn scout skills because he would be looking at GPS maps. And he thought that it was, you reverted to text language and emojis that he found kind of beneath him, right? So while on the one hand, he was born on third, as much as possible, he wanted to have legitimate, not rigged achievements. And achievements like, oh, I introduced you to, it's like Operation Varsity Blues, about all those rich cheaters that got into colleges, not on their merits. I heard this great educational person saying, they know that you decided that they couldn't do it. They weren't worth their salt. They couldn't get in on their own. They couldn't, get a good SAT score to save their lives. And yet that was important to you. So you cheated, and they live with that their whole lives. Like that terrible idea that even my parents didn't have faith in me. And I think that is something that Ben did not want. He does not want, me to make introductions for him. He didn't let me touch his application to Deep Springs, because you're aware that it's all luck. You've gotten there. And I think boys are especially anxious about this. But, everyone else who wants autonomy in their lives doesn't want to think that they my dad put in a call once when I was in high school. I really wanted to get into this particular class. It was like on Whitman. And I had like tried to get in at the last minute. I had just been sloppy and tried to get in. So my dad called the teacher to get me into the class. And I felt I didn't deserve to be in the class. So Ben put that out to me. He said, no advertising, me or any achievements of mine on Instagram. Like, I don't want to feel beholden to you. He doesn't even like me to put up handsome pictures of him on Instagram, because then it seems like, oh, your mom, whatever. So like, it is the nightmare, I think, of a lot of kids that they are, that they're fed by their mothers and fathers, that they're on the payroll, that they're given money for shopping. He started teaching chess early so that he never needed money from me. And Deep Springs doesn't cost anything because he just wanted to be independent. Now, are those things, the idea that you're, especially a white boy, that it's all privilege and it's all an accident of your birth. And it's all because, your parents were upper middle class and had some money that you got where you are. That is just like an existential nightmare. It's an existential nightmare to me. As I say, I couldn't get through the Whitman class because my dad had made this call to the teacher. I hate it when he, tries to do anything for me, because I can't live with the fact that nothing is gained on merit. So that's one thing I did for him, is try to help him just step back. So he really did things on his own. So he felt like he had some legitimate and unrigged achievements. And I got this from my mom. Use the expression, and here's my quick news you can use. Here's a parenting hack.
Yeah.
Use the expression, what luck, wherever possible. Luck is such a better name than privilege. It's so much more fun. And also, you make more luck in your life by looking for luck. So if you, and this is, I actually just wrote about this for Wired.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it. So go ahead. Your most recent piece of Wired is a fascinating look at this issue, the secret to being lucky. Everything happens for no reason. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, Americans have this idea that, something attributed to Thomas Jefferson, the harder you work, harder I work, the luckier I get, right? So we try to tell ourselves it's work. That sounds great. It sounds very inspiring. On the other hand, that is, I was born on third and I thought I hit a triple. Why don't we have something like, the luckier I get, the harder I believe or I tell myself I worked, right? That's the triple born on. So I think acknowledging the role of luck in your life for everything, instead of saying I'm unlucky, I got COVID, you say, how lucky I bounced back from this, right? And that's just a simple way of saying biology, accidents of birth, the zip code I was born into, the books my parents had in the house, all those things made me who I am. So what luck? So basically, I get this from my mom. It's a sunny day. What luck? Sometimes if it's a rainy day, we needed the rain, the soaking rain. We needed this. What luck? And it sounds kind of corny, but we're of Irish descent, and it's, the Irish have chronically bad luck and then always tell themselves they're lucky. I think the emoji for Ireland on my phone is the 4-leaf clover. And the fact that one small country has a monopoly on the idea of luck, good branding, right?
Really, really funny. You'd said, by the way, in this article, the odds of finding a 4-leaf clover are 1 in 10,000, which is interesting. But you also write
research.
After all, the chances of the precise sperm colliding with the exact egg in the right fallopian tube and convening to make you or me are so low as to be undetectable with human mathematics. The meeting that determines only 100% of your existence. I mean, you mentioned zip code. I mean, America, to not be born in the slums of the Kibera slums or somewhere in some undeveloped country. Like, that's what I thought of when I read that sentence about, because I always think about that being born even in this country, even being born into poverty in this country is luckier than being born into poverty in worse places, which we could name, I suppose. But those people always seem to know how to smile more than us too. If you want to be honest.
That's right. I mean, there are many, just the fact that against the odds you exist in the world.
Yeah.
And I know I sound like one of those inspirational, books sold at the checkout at CVS or whatever.
I buy them.
Come on, who doesn't need a little inspiration and a kind of ray of sun on a cover? But but yeah, so getting both kids to acknowledge their luck, which, if I may, that's something like check your privilege, except it's more fun. Acknowledge your luck, and also, and then also, as much as possible, give them some real achievements, not rigged achievements. Now, we're not they play a little bit of tennis, but hardly anyone in my immediate family is super sporty. But one of the reasons, that, a lot of white guys who may be privileged, like some things like marathons or, mountain climbing, just so you can feel your body do something that people can't take away from you. And I think that's a really good thing. And service is key to that. Service is something that you are not born into, freaking helping others. Last thing, I had a friend, I think this is the funniest thing ever, who she hadn't read, and I still haven't, the Dalai Lama's The Secret of Happiness. And so she decided to get, like a summary from her friend, like you do. So she said, just tell me what the secret to happiness is. And then all of a sudden she said, oh no, it's not helping people, is it? Please don't say it's helping people. It's helping people because, you want it to be Prozac. And her friend said, yeah, it's helping people. And she was like, no, but yeah, like freaking help people. It's not something that, you have to be born into. You don't have to have a lot of luck to be in a position to help someone who's having a harder time than you are.
So well said. So well said. I'm in a bit of a kind of a spiritual transformation myself right now, and led mostly by the work of Pema Chodron, who is just really amazing. She's 80 now, Buddhist monk. But the answer isn't. I would love to know what you think about this, but I finally figured out that the answer to like less suffering and a better life is not getting to the root of your problems exclusively through therapy or other means. That's great. Good, I'm all for that. But you actually have to have a practice every day. And so I started meditating in a different way than I ever did before, because I'd always tried it and believed in it, but it wasn't giving me benefits. And now I do it differently, using mantras and stuff. And the point being, I do it every day. And I remind myself things like, let me not overreact. Let me understand the moment between stimulus and response. And then I do like a little gratefulness thing. And it's absolutely transformative, no different than any other thing that you do. But you got to do it every day, or else you become all the things that you don't want to be. And that's what I've learned. Do you think there's any truth to daily practice at all?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that everyone has a built-in forgetter. So, you remind yourself in a meeting that, you wait between the stimulus and the response, someone cuts you off in traffic and, everyone's carrying a heavy burden. Someone else is in a rush somewhere, or, really, truly just doesn't know well how to drive, which is, something we can feel sympathy for. Think of something you don't know how to do well, and then that maybe you don't know how to do your taxes, and they don't know how to drive very well, and so you can identify with them. There are ways that you can identify even with, try to do something with an experiment with two people I found intolerable that were living in my head rent free. They were Brett Kavanaugh and Roger Stone. Just decided to find someone that I could not, identify with. Those are good
choices, yeah.
And with Brett Kavanaugh, what I said was, God, there are definitely, first of all, who wasn't a sexual, lunkhead when they were in high school, didn't know what they were doing at all, who misstepped in every way, right? And also, who doesn't decide at a low point in their life where they're unqualified to go for a big job? And, that they're unqualified for. So the arrogance and the ineptitude were things I could get behind. And that really helped me relieve that pressure. But I have a built-in forgetter that I'm supposed to, that establishing a certain amount of compassion for people is the way to peace. And, I get in a frenzy the next day and decide, Trumpites or the former president or Don Jr. is just intolerable to me. And, all I can do is sit around and, pull out my hair over this, and nobody's getting anywhere with that. So
yeah, no, that's a very perfect real life example. And you mentioned, just that program and addiction, which you've been public about with your journey. But that's how I feel now too. I'm almost always easy to joke about it. I'm always been jealous of addicts because I wish I could finish anything. Number one, and number two, support groups seem really great, regardless of what they are. But how do guys like me get in a support group if they don't have a very specific either addiction or issue to something? And I feel, as close as what I've heard, it feels like to get sober, to be struggling like that, through this kind of daily practice routine that I'm doing, I feel completely different, that I have to renew it every day. It's as close as I've found to having any ability to relate. So it's a perfect. Let me ask you though, before I got to let you go, I can't believe we've already been talking so long, Virginia. I've got to just ask you some political related stuff, and get your take on it. You, of course, were the host of the wildly popular podcast, Trumpcast. Very few people know more or more thoughtful, I think, and go deeper than you can. And tying everything we talked about together in terms of privilege and meritocracy, will Jared Kushner ever get his? He's written a new book. He's talked about luck. And, he seems to think that he's a valuable guy. And the New York Times, I think, writing their review of his book is hilarious. But you have your thought. Is he ever going to get his comeuppance? Because I feel like he doesn't get nearly enough attention.
Jared Kushner is a perfect example of not fully he doesn't fully grasp his luck, right?
Yeah.
But there's a really sad story about Jared Kushner early in his life, early in his career, such as it is.
Is it that he walked into his bedroom and found Benjamin Netanyahu? Was that it or no?
Oh, yeah, there's that, too. No, this is the one where he was at Frisch, a Jewish day school in New Jersey. And his father, he was considered, I think, in this book called Getting In, he was described as being it was a tracked school. And he was on the sort of C track or the 3 track. And there was, I'm not sure I have the details exactly right, but there was a girl who was the best student the school had ever seen. And she was on the A track and she wanted nothing more than to go to Harvard. And she was from a very middle-class family. And Kushner, as everybody knows, gave a huge amount of money, Kushner's father, to Harvard, and he got in. So not only did he not get in on his merits, and so he's stuck knowing somewhere in his heart of hearts that he is not a Harvard graduate. She didn't get in. And I would say I think about that almost every day, that I see the disastrous move of privilege that and even the principal of Frisch, and the principal is going to want to be associated with this rich family, said this was a tragedy for someone who had really worked. You cannot imagine Jared Kushner or Don Jr., 2 Ivy League graduates, ever sitting down and doing a polynomial. I mean, I cannot, right? Like, I don't understand how they got through school. Did they read Moby Dick? Did they know anything about polynomials? Didn't they know what the Krebs cycle is? I mean, I barely do. And you had to sit through it, right? You had to read Of Mice and Men or whatever, right? Just one book. I mean, I cannot imagine either of them doing any of this. And on some level, Jared Kushner knows he hasn't read anything. He's never done a polynomial. He doesn't deserve to be where he is. And that's where I find a little compassion for him, because that is hell on earth as far as I'm concerned. And then the real hell on earth is being, is the woman that didn't get in and that really worked for it and then had to see this thing happen. And it's a disgrace to the school too. It's a disgrace to everyone. And then for him to imagine that he's accomplished all these things in business and politics is just a headache. Will he ever get his? I mean, we know his father, who set up his brother-in-law with a prostitute, then went to jail for it, served time in a Alabama prison camp, went to jail for it. A lot of these people, including Kellyanne Conway and Rudy Giuliani, are, the sons and daughters of thugs who did prison time. And, they're in the system, they're institutionalized, and it may be that he ends up in some kind of prison. But I see you shaking your head when I say that there's some kind of despair at the core of what he did, what he's done, that he may actually be able every single night to say to himself, I deserved this. No. But no. I suspect it preys on him. And if it doesn't prey on him, it preys on the culture. And he makes the world a worse place.
Well, the latter is obviously true. I don't think that your enlightened view of things or that your hangups about getting into the one class, which probably, by the way, is the only reason for any of your success. I'm just trying to make it worse for you. I mean, like your enlightened view of that thing, like projecting any of that on him is probably giving him maybe too much credit. Maybe it brings you comfort to think. I think that someone like him, someone like me, I went through I only recently started to really understand how some of my behaviors, reactions, and ego were affecting. I could not understand so many of the issues I was having in relationships. I was constantly blaming everybody but myself. I do not think most people, and I don't know, for me, it was a bunch of circumstances coming together. I don't think most people, and probably a lot of men, I want to talk about men, come to these conclusions. We're really convinced that it's you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The thing is, we're guessing too much about the interior lives of people like Trump and Jared Kushner.
Sure.
I do think that just judging from my son and maybe you, it does not feel good ultimately for anyone with a soul, and he may not have that, to go through life seeing everything's rigged for you or imagining that you achieved all your privileges and all your luck. These things are just absolute states of confusion. And I think not a great place to be. And also, he hasn't achieved anything in the world or made the world a better place. So, I don't know. That's between him and his deathbed, I guess. And I try not to speculate about it. Although, as you know, these people have just busted into our skulls. And it's hard not to, just get mad at them all the time.
I just have to ask you one more political Trump related. One of the phrases I roll my eyes out the most is the walls are closing in.
Oh, yeah.
So where are you on that phrase, and what are the walls, and are they closing in?
I just heard someone use the expression blue anon. Blue anon is this constant belief that everybody's going to jail. I mean, you may remember that QAnon believed that, at the Great Awakening, there'd be, everyone, all their enemies in handcuffs. And while it is, somewhat consoling, I think the art critic Jerry Saltz said, he would just dream about, the kind of Seth Abramson thing or the kind of Louise Mensch thing that everyone was going to be in the electric chair tomorrow. I think we've all gotten our hopes up about Mueller report, the first impeachment, the second impeachment. And I think you are absolutely right. To bet on the walls closing in is not a bad bet, not a bet I would take. At the same time, I love the idea, even being, arrested for having this raid go on for mismanagement of documents, because I have a friend who's in corrections, and he voted for Trump, immediately regretted it. But what he said is, he was against Hillary Clinton because if she'd mismanaged her emails or whatever that was, then he was deluded, but that he himself would get fired if he had, mismanaged his documents in the same way.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the idea, it's good for humanity to have highly privileged people like a former president of the United States held responsible for the things that we are constantly held responsible for. And I think, letting him slip the knot over and over again is bad on the psyche. I don't care about Trump, but it's bad on the psyche of most Americans who have to pay their taxes, who try not to sort of cheat on their partners and roll along, or, don't discriminate in real estate against would-be black tenants. Everything that he's done are things that most of us, the vast majority of us, would never think of doing. And for gravity not to be binding on a privileged person or an extraordinarily privileged person or the leader of the free world makes us all feel like shit. Well, so for the rest of us,
that would be a conclusion of the human experience, maybe. But I don't know that accountability is very American. It seems like it's a thing in South Korea, with executives, or in Iceland with politicians, or I don't know where else, Israel, or maybe even the UK. That there's accountability matters for corporate abuse or powerful people who are using their power, and it's a good thing, and it's been a good thing throughout their generation, and maybe it's a good thing in certain sectors of American culture, but it doesn't seem like we've had very much luck when it comes to, say, the financial crisis. I'm just thinking about our generation, my generation.
That's right. That the fact that the fact that no head of a bank went to jail over the financial crisis, looms large over all of us. No one has a brief for the head of Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley who sits around saying, "Oh, I'm so glad that guy's a free man after we lost our houses and there were foreclosures." So this is a chance for the FBI to repair that. And, it's terrible for me to see such a great citizen like yourself say there's no accountability for people in power in the United States. It's like that's going toward we're a failed state. I mean, the reason I bring up our Operation Varsity Blues, great name, right?
Yeah.
The one that got all those cheaters, is that it lets us hold out hope that the cheaters, there will be accountability for cheaters. Now, it doesn't happen a lot of the time, but every time it does happen, it's good for the polity to see. And I have to be optimistic that there will be accountability for, more than a handful of people. I
feel a little bad now because I realize there is accountability and there's a lot of good people, creating accountability for white collar crime and for other things. I just think about these generational crimes, specifically the financial crisis, Iraq, and the Sackler family, Purdue Pharma with the heroin epidemic, which continues. And in those kind of examples, from torture to the war itself, from, opioid addiction to the fact that I was underwater on my mortgage for so long. I think of those high profile things, but certainly there's accountability in many different places for powerful people in America. We just don't talk about it as much, I guess. I don't know.
The other thing about losing faith in accountability and losing faith in the DOJ. Yeah. The other problem with that is then we let ourselves go. Because, it's like the reason you start cheating on your taxes, the reason you start cheating on your spouse is because you say everybody does it and everybody gets away with it. And the overmen of the world, get to, whatever, drive their Maseratis or trade on insider information and cheat to get their kids into college. So why not I do it? It's like when I went to my psychiatrist years ago, and said, I think antidepressants, are making me sluggish and whatever. And she said, "Oh, you don't know what everybody else does? They take a bunch of Adderall. It's slimming, it's great, and you're losing your edge because you don't have Adderall." And I dutifully swallowed a mouthful of Adderall or, took Adderall every day. And that led to addiction. But it was that thing of, oh, you're an idiot. You need to get red pilled and understand how the world works. And I did feel like a chump. And Trump says, "Oh, only losers pay their taxes. I'm smart because I don't pay my taxes." And then you aspire to do it. So if we say that everybody else is getting away with a lot, that makes us feel like we need to get away with a lot. And that's why Operation Varsity Blues or this raid on Mar-a-Lago are, to me, good developments, not just because I feel vengeful against the privileged, but because I think it sends a good signal to us that there is, as you say, accountability.
So well said is everything you say and write. And I'll let you go, but your amazing podcast, I think it's your second. You did Trumpcast, now Critical. This is Critical.
This is Critical, yeah.
And 51 episodes of This is Critical. One of the most brilliant things. I stole many guests and ideas from it. Is wrapping after 51 episodes. And you're starting a new podcast with Mike Pesca, formerly of Slate, which is very exciting. So just as I let you go, kind of as a way to plug, what's going on with Virginia Heffernan in addition to the Substack and your Wired and other contributions that you make regularly?
It's a real debate show. It's a panel show. We have one serious conservative on it. We have me on the left, and we have a centrist in Mike Pesca. We don't secretly agree about everything, but we don't, end
Love
up
it.
in a kind of bitter
Love it.
dispute. It's called Not Even Mad. And I got to say, it's hard for me not to be mad at the conservative on the show and vice versa. But we have a great time in these pilots, and it drops October 2nd.
I love that idea. I did a very similar segment for maybe a few years on my old show where I had John Avlon, who was the centrist, and I had Will Kane, who was the conservative. And John and I and Will became really good friends. We'd go out, we'd talk, we got our families together for dinner. And John and I are still good friends. But the last time I reached out to Will Kane was a text to him telling him to stop telling people that vaccines are dangerous. And that was it. It's like, I'm sure that won't happen, but like, it's so hard. So I'm glad that you're doing this exercise. And I hope that he does not become the co-host of Fox and Friends.
Yeah, I think he's far from that. And we did test the waters on Trump. But I want to save all of it for a surprise, because there's so many surprises in this show. So anyway, it's called Not Even Mad. It drops October 2nd. And I think it's going to be great.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. I can't wait to talk to you again to promote that. And anytime I get the opportunity to, what a wonderful privilege it is. Oh, what luck I've had to talk with Virginia Heffernan today. Thank you so much for joining me. I love, love, love having you on the show, and everybody else does too.
Thanks, Pete.
Well, what did I tell you? Virginia Heffernan at page 88. At page 88. Read her at Wired. Subscribe to her Substack, virginiaheffernan.substack.com, and check out all of the rest of her work that you can find in links in today's show notes, as well as more about my next guest, Wajahat Ali. Oh, you're going to love this one. I mean, we started just by talking about the ridiculousness that is Chuck E. Cheese in the state of Florida. Lots to say. You're going to absolutely love it. But first, real quick, your business is your dream, right? I mean, you want the people who share it and have the skills to help it grow. That's who you want working with you. Well, you're going to find them faster if you go with Indeed. That's right. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. So find great talent faster using their time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. And Indeed's the only job site where you can only have to pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring partner, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. So go join 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed and hire great talent fast. And in the short time I've been talking to you, 16 hires were made on Indeed. When you sponsor an Indeed post in the U.S., you're 3 times more likely to get a hire. The right candidate is there waiting for you. You're doing everything they can to find you. And if you use Indeed, you can be sure you're doing everything you can to find them too. So go to Indeed.com/standup right now, and you can start hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit. Upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/standup. The offer's good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. Okay, now with that said, I'm very excited to bring you my conversation, my latest with Wajahat Ali. Go follow him on Twitter, where he is prolific. Go read him at The Daily Beast. And, of course, get his book, Go Back to Where You Came From, which is on my top stand-up recommended book club, which I've just made. But it really is at the very top. It's so good. He's so good. I love him. Here we go. Waj, let's do it.
Florida is a fascinating place. I feel like if people want to understand America, they need to just go up and down Florida. It's a absurd microcosm of this strange country.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about it more publicly.
I did talk about last time I went to Florida, and then people were like, "Man, why'd you talk about masks?" Nah. But they had alligators.
How do you feel about alligators?
I'm cool with alligators. They mind their own business, and humans who get in their way get eaten. Kids saw an emu. We saw an emu, an alligator, a peacock. A lot of gun stores, men desperate to escape to a better life, dressed up as Mickey Mouse. It was interesting.
Did you take your kids to Disney World?
We're gonna take them next year. Because of Nuseba, her Make-A-Wish wish was to go to Disney World, but due to COVID and her immunosuppressed state, we waited for a while. So apparently, we're gonna go in a few months when the rush dies down. But other than that, the kids have a great time, man. We went to Chuck E. Cheese, where if you ever want, like you have 2 kids. I don't know if you remember the Chuck E. Cheese days. If you ever want to see like an ocean of broken souls, like dead, vacant eyes.
Yeah.
Just take them to Chuck E. Cheese on a Friday night. I empathize.
Chucky himself.
Yeah, like if you're not suicidal or homicidal working at Chuck E. Cheese, then apparently you're living life wrong. Like, I felt so much for the people, because they have, like, I think it's a dude who has to come out in the Chuck E. Cheese suit and like do this dance, and then all these kids like surround him, and he has to like stick to the choreography and the song, and then you could just see him as he, like, the song finishes, his like shoulders droop, and he just like walks back. And sometimes, if you're lucky, he gets to take off the mask right before he enters the door, and you just see like a man broken, like a person whose soul has been taken. And then he just like, you're like, oh God, every time I feel bad in life, at least I'm not wearing that Chuck E. Cheese suit. And then you just pray for him.
I feel like it's a guy like Jeff Sessions in there.
Jeff Sessions is like, what did I get to trade my soul? And like the devil's like, this Chuck E. Cheese suit.
My daughter would hate that Chucky, the mouse. Hate when it would cry. She would go crazy when Chucky came out.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like terrifying, right? Like, it's one of those situations, like, I feel like Chuck E. Cheese suit represents life, like the mask that we all wear. Like, we have to just sit there and go through the motions and smile. But like, internally, if people could do like an emotional audit, they just realize how broken we really are.
We used to go and jump in the ballroom, and, you know, they had a room with a bunch of balls in it. And
back in the day, they had that in the 80s and 90s.
And there used to be tokens. You'd get tokens to play video games at Chuck E. Cheese or any arcade. And so if you went in the ballroom and you dug down, you would find inevitably some tokens that fell out of a kid's pocket. But one time we found a kid.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those kits that's going to help the domestic supply of infants. Republicans are basically going to tell people to just leave their babies in the Chuck E. Cheese ball pit.
Well, I think we've already gotten started. And so I want to ask you, as usual, I hope this is the only podcast that you do. You're in a lot of demand. Apparently, you're hosting a new show. I don't know what's going on with you, but I need an update. But I want to believe this is the only one that as soon as you pop in, we're just going. I'm recording.
It is the only podcast that happens. Other times you have to fluff the guests, you have to lay the groundworks, and you got to what do you want to promote? And then people give you time cues. And maybe I should be like, do that with you. Maybe I should be like, Pete, what are we talking about today? But for those who don't know, pretty much Pete says, hey, join me at 5. And then I say, how about 5:30? You're like, I'll send you a link. And then it's an adventure.
Yeah. I mean, we're generally going to talk about things that you've either written or spoken about, but sometimes as the way we started, not necessarily. But I do want to ask you, what is your situation? What is your affiliation, your relationship with dairy? I see you've had a lot to say. Did you just find out that you're intolerant of dairy?
So I think I've been lactose intolerant for a while, but I just thought pain and suffering was normal. And then I think 2 years ago, I think I said something out loud to my wife, who, as we've already established on your program, is like a genetic freak.
Yeah.
Like,
happy
she's
anniversary, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we married 10 years. She stuck by me. 10-year anniversary last week. It goes by fast, and it goes by well when you actually like your spouse and your spouse tolerates you. But like my wife, I'm not a eugenicist. But I thought, I might as well play the cards. And so my wife is the opposite of me. She has 6-pack abs. She eats shit, loses weight for I get punished for eating an ice cream. She loses weight. And so I thought, if we ever have kids, I want all my genes to be recessive, and hers to be dominant. And so, I think I said something out loud where I'm like, yeah, every time you eat, doesn't your stomach hurt? And my wife's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, aren't you always in pain? She goes, no, only when I have food poisoning. And I'm like, oh. And so I thought this was normal. And so I always have issues since I was a kid. But then my father was like, I've been telling you, after the age of 40, our peoples lose the ability to digest lactose. And then finally I switched over to this thing called lactate pills.
Yeah.
And I'm in less pain. And so now I carry a diabetic has insulin. I carry lactose pills everywhere.
So is dairy a primary ingredient in a lot of your people's ethnic food? Pakistani
I think dairy is
food?
a primary ingredient in most good things in life. Yeah. But human beings after a certain age, Asia, and especially we just lose the ability. And I think most of us just like dairy so much that we just realize that, farting is normal. And gas is bloating and pain is normal, but actually it's not. And so, we've talked about being middle-aged men in our 40s.
Sure.
And we've talked about like how we're trying to work on ourselves spiritually, emotionally, physically.
For sure.
I don't know about you, but like I realize like I don't want to be in pain anymore. Like sleep is good and eating healthier is good and losing weight is good. And then we're at that age in our life where our elders are either dying or, suffering. And you're like, maybe I can avoid some of this. So I feel like if I have to take these lactate pills, damn it, I'm going to own my middle-aged status with pride. Here's my love handles. Here's my white hairs. Here's my lactate pills. Here's me sweating profusely at the gym, perhaps looking at times 3 seconds too long at the exceedingly attractive woman next to me without realizing, I'm not a young man. I can't get away with it anymore.
Yeah.
I realize like you don't even realize it's happening. And then you become like that dude. I remember I was at the gym, like just running like a loser, trying to lose 5 pounds, trying to stay overweight. And there's all these attractive women running around me. I just look around because what else are you going to do? Just running. And then this woman, I think she thought I was checking her out, but I really wasn't. And then she looked at me and she just rolled her eyes. And I felt like so much shame and guilt. And I'm like, I've become that guy. I've become like that creepy old man.
Maybe she just
gym.
saw your most recent appearance on MSNBC, though. I mean, you never know.
No, but she wouldn't roll her eyes. She's like, oh, that's the guy talking about white supremacy. But maybe she was. Maybe she was like the alpha Karen. The one who voted for Youngkin and Trump. She's like, he's at my gym.
I was walking in New York City a couple nights ago with my wife and my daughters and their cousin. So 4 attractive women. And I like to walk like just a few feet behind them and see what happens.
Hella creepy.
And so this guy just says, excuse me. He's like, are you looking for a husband, miss? You looking for a husband? And he said it to one of my daughters. And I said, no, but I'm their father. And dude was so wrecked and embarrassed. He goes, no disrespect. No disrespect. I was like, I'm just messing with you, man. Just remember when you're catcalling women, be careful.
I was you once. I was you once.
So,
and that's the thing. We're such, if women know, but if women really knew, if they really knew what degenerate, just like evil, vile people we are, like if they knew the thoughts that were in our head from the age of 14 onward, they were about to give birth to a son, they would just shove the son back in the womb.
Shove it back in.
They're like, no, give me the daughter. Give me the daughter. I don't want this one. And it's like this, it's like this struggle to be decent. And this is not to say there's any excuse. And I hope people are who are listening, there's no excuse for misogyny. There's no excuse or rationalization for being a pig. You work on it. But I'm just saying, it's like that caveman. And I think like my wife is, I think the reason we get along is my wife understands men really well and like the innate disposition of men. Yeah. And so she's like, listen, I'll give you like a one look once in a while. I'll allow you a comment. You're a good man. And like she gives me those comments. And if I stray too far, she like check me. She goes, you don't have to let me know every woman you're attracted to. That was the first fatal flaw I made as a young married man 10 years ago. And I'm like, don't you want me to be open? And she goes, you don't have to be open about everything. Some thoughts you can keep in your head.
If you really want to know what it feels like to be a woman targeted by men, hang out with a bunch of gay guys. And I'll never forget feeling like objectified for the first time. For the first time ever. I was just like, I can't believe you're looking at me like that. This is ridiculous. Like I got really upset with this guy who I took out to an event years ago. And I realized, that's what I've been doing to women for years. But
so that's what happened to me a couple of years ago. I came home, I got checked out, I'm pretty sure, because you feel it. You're like, you're getting checked, and then you feel kind of like like someone's like eyeballing you and treating you like a piece of meat and objectifying you. And I went home and I told my wife. She goes, take it as a compliment. Gay men have like high standards. I'm like, yeah, but like at the same time, he just saw me as a piece of meat. And she goes, yep, welcome to being a woman. And I'm like, how many times does that happen to you a day? She goes, you lose count, but at least 30.
That's crazy. I do love your wife's false impression that gay men have high standards. Maybe the high profile ones, the ones that make remarks. But no, they're men. They're men.
No, she was probably just making me feel good. She goes, I think they have high standards.
Right. She's like, I'm surprised they had such low standards.
Yeah. And I'm like, as a man, I think no, they just see penis and they're like, that'll do. That'll do. It's like that line from Babe, that'll do, pig. That'll do.
I don't remember that, but I like the way you delivered it. So, a bunch of things I wanted to talk with you about other than these things that we've been talking about. And I want to get to it. First of all, I wanted to mention I've been talking with you about this for a long time. Priorities, what's in the public's interest. It's how I think about what I want to talk about on the show and who I want to talk to. And last week, while I was on staycation, a new, I think, NBC poll found that, quote, threats to democracy have overtaken the cost of living as voters' top issue facing the country for midterms. You've been talking a lot about this, and it's super, super important for so many reasons. But I'll start by making a point, which is I think that the January 6th committee is the reason, probably the primary reason why threats to democracy have become such a more overt issue for a lot of more general public than those of us who are kind of addicted to politics and news. How big of a deal is this one poll? Is it an outlier?
I think it's huge. Who would have thought that democracy is a kitchen table issue?
Yeah.
It seems that when people realize fascism is at the precipice, they realize that all other liberties and rights fall away. And it also reveals, if I may, that we were right. And thank you for acknowledging that me and a few others, especially on your podcast, have been trying to, not to just sound the alarm, but encourage Democrats and the majority to lead with this. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for our rights. We're fighting for accountability, which is why it's so important that when Democrats have the power, they set the agenda. They set the frame. They set the talking points. They don't just follow the Republican talking points. They don't just rely upon the overpaid, ineffectual corporate, insider strategists who keep talking about, placating, Hank, who's in the Rust Belt, who's an undecided voter, right?
Hank.
And trying to placate white rage. No, the January 6th commissions revealed to what you and I knew, that if you set the agenda, if you make it prime time, if you tell the media, which, is like the dog from Up, right? You yell squirrel, they're like squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. What squirrel? Scooplet? Scoop? Can we have a scoop? The people will understand and appreciate. You have to tell the story. And if you're not telling the story, how can you blame the people for not knowing what are the threats? And so lo and behold, with the Democrats flexing their power in the House, in the Senate, with the presidency, with President Biden now, he did something which we've been begging him to do just last week when he signed the Inflation Reduction Bill. What did he say? No Republican signed this bill. He said it again and again and again. So you have to tell people this is what we stand for: democracy, freedom, rights, law and order. And this is what the opposition stands for. They stand for fascism. They're against law and order. And then drip, 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 leading up to the midterms, you roll out the case where you show this damning indictment of Donald Trump, and you pray to God that the DOJ flexes his muscle, and it seems like Merrick Garland is stepping up. And lo and behold, people are like, oh shit, these darkies were right. They went after abortion. They're going after voting rights. They're going after public education. Zero exceptions for rape and incest. Oh God, look, they're perfectly fine with the January 6th insurrection. Oh my God, my grandparents who fought in the wars, they fought for nothing. That's not right. Oh my God, our ancestors who fought against the British, they fought for a free country. F this. And the Republicans are doubling down on their extremism. Yeah. Nope. It seems that democracy is a kitchen table issue that most Americans care about. And maybe, just maybe, we should flex our power. And I will say the last thing I'll say here is you have to indict Nancy Pelosi for this and some of the Democratic leaders, because I always want to remind folks that when it came to the first impeachment of Donald Trump, let's not forget that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats slow walked that impeachment because they said the polls reveal that Americans just don't care. And even when it came to the January 6th hearing a few months ago in the spring, Pete, you heard those leaks, right? Democrats are saying this won't move the needle, but we just have to do it for the sake of doing it. And we kept saying it will move the needle. If you tell people, if you make the case, if you lead the news with it, the people, we're fickle people. Americans have like the attention span of gnats, drunk gnats on meth. The people will care. And lo and behold, people care. And once that Supreme Court ruling came, I said, lead with the culture war. I kept saying it, even on your show, lead with this. And lo and behold, what's the number 2 issue? Abortion.
The Democrats can win culture war issues. You wrote a great piece about this at the Daily Beast if they focus on them. And let me just play Ron DeSantis for you and everybody for 30 seconds of our miserable lives. I have to play this because I have to get Waj to respond to it. But this is Ron DeSantis and, I don't know, some conservative turning point, I think it is, a gathering of fascists. Here it is.
Got it.
We can't just stand idly by while woke ideology ravages every institution in our society. We must fight the woke in our schools. We must fight the woke in our businesses. We must fight the woke in government agencies. We can never, ever surrender to woke ideology. And I'll tell you this, the state of Florida is where woke goes to die.
What's worse, the content of his message or that he ripped off Winston Churchill?
Both. And also, I don't sense any BDE there. From DeSantis, do you? That seems like some limp
big dick energy. So the in case folks don't know, this woman Carrie Lake, who is the primary, she won the Republican primary. She's the Republican nominee for governor in Arizona. She literally said that Ron DeSantis had BDE, which means big dick energy, which a lot of people, by the way, are analyzing as a shift towards him, away from Trump, and kind of, also the kind of thing that would irk Trump, that DeSantis is a big dick or big dick energy, whatever that means.
So two things there. The shift away from Trump hedging their bets. So you had Carrie Lake saying that. You had Alex Jones get off the Trump wagon. You had Laura Ingraham signal that she's on the DeSantis train. And you just had this amazing op-ed on Fox, which was remarkable. I don't know if you saw, where there's a case being made for what Trump did, and taking the classified documents was wrong. That's like a shiv in the back, right? And so DeSantis is who they're backing on. And DeSantis, like I mentioned, I think I wrote about this a year ago. I said, keep your eye on DeSantis, that Florida and Texas in particular are laboratories for the GOP national project. They're testing out their extreme vision of this Christian nationalism and white supremacy in Florida and Texas. And if it succeeds, then you're going to see DeSantis and Abbott trying to make a run for it on a national level. This is what's happening right now. So with wokeism, what does woke mean?
Yeah, let me just read your tweet.
Yeah.
Woke equals racial justice, gender equality, gay rights, decency, public education, science, respect for democracy, books, people of color existing, accountability for Republicans, law and order for Republicans, fighting fascism, being against anti-Semitism, Muslims in America. That's what you equate woke to, and that's everything that they
And that's where, and exactly, under DeSantis and this Christian nationalist counter-majoritarian right-wing force, wokeism dies in Florida, in Texas, in the United States of America, if the Republicans get power again. So he's not wrong about that, but woke becomes this boogeyman, this straw man like CRT, which the Republicans can fashion and weaponize into whatever they want. Right. Woke is coming for you. What does woke mean? Sharia. Oh, shit, I'm scared of Sharia. What does it mean? I don't know, but it's terrifying, like CRT. What's that? I don't know, but they're going to make our kids into transgender activists who are atheist vegans and who hate hamburgers, right? And so I want to say, and I'm going to write about this tonight, actually, for the Daily Beast, is we should be woke. You want to be woke. Yes. Woke is a good thing.
Yes.
And this is where Democrats need to double down, define woke, get ahead of it, and tell people, yes, we are woke. We're not afraid of woke. We should be woke, because the alternative is to be friggin' in a coma as we have climate change, if we have spiraling prescription costs, if we have, healthcare costs, if we have tax increases for the middle class, if we have the end of Social Security, if we have white Christian nationalism that is going to come after law enforcement and all of our rights. And so I want Democrats in the majority to define woke and say, it's good to be woke. You want to be woke. And for those people who are skeptical, woke is like vegetables. At first, it might make you uncomfortable. You might not like it, but you realize, oh, it's good for me. It's good for my soul. It's good for the kids. It makes me live longer. And it's actually tasty vegetables. It's seasoned. You actually can put spices in it. And meanwhile, what DeSantis is selling you is bland chicken without spices.
Yeah.
Do you want a potato salad with nasty raisins in it? Then vote DeSantis. If you want an America that stretches and expands, includes the rest of us, then yeah, wokeism is the seasoning that you need.
It couldn't very, very well said. But I mean, it's also the difference between kind of a liberal, open-minded, curious, empathic person and an individualist conservative who doesn't, like new things. I mean, I remember being called woke, years ago by a black person and knowing it was a compliment. So was being called stupid by black people in college. Oh, you so stupid. It meant I'm funny. Like there's certain words that were paid to you by, in this case, non-white people for me, that made me feel good. They were compliments. They were a sign of approval, a sign of credibility. In this case, it was simply curiosity and open-mindedness. When I hear a Republican or a white person use woke pejoratively, I always know what I'm hearing. It's like that's an anti-racist or someone who's trying to be anti-racist.
Well, it's a combination of a reliable strategy that we've talked about on the show before, the Southern strategy that came out of Arizona, Barry Goldwater, in response to the civil rights movement, right? Specifically, that we have to be against the civil rights movement, and so we have to be overtly racist. In the 60s, it didn't work, but Nixon said, I can win over a lot of these white moderates and white Democrats by playing race against class. And so let me do dog whistles. Lee Atwater, the Republican strategist, famously said in 1980, you can no longer say the N-word. So we talk about voting rights and busing and states' rights. Well, now in the 21st century, they're full white nationalists. They're full white supremacists. Like, just look at Tucker Carlson. But you can still do a Trojan horse of CRT and wokeness. Yeah. Literally, as the guy Christopher Rufo, the right-wing activist, said, that we can weaponize CRT and make it into anything we want to paint the Democrats as these crazy extremists and terrify our base, right? He literally admitted it. Like, literally, I'm using the word literally as it's meant to use. And so woke is like now the first cousin of CRT. And so they could do the Southern strategy of using it as a Trojan horse for, like you said, what they're talking about. They're talking about racial equality, gender equality, basically anything and everything that makes this country great. They're against, to go back to 1954, to have white male rule. But this is where the Democrats have an opportunity. Instead of always bowing down to fear, instead of being afraid of their own shadow, which is black, instead of, trying to win over this undecided white voter, embrace it. Yes, I am woke. I am for these progressive values. I am for racial equality. I am for gender equality. I am for acknowledging climate change. I am for science. I am for vaccines. You should be woke. Your kids should be woke. I love it. Wokeness is good for the soul, just like vegetables. In fact, why aren't you woke? And a parallel here is, how Republicans owned deplorable? Democrats should own woke.
That's great. That's great. I think it's harder for Democrats to do that kind of thing, but I think you're absolutely right. I think you should open a smoothie shop called Wokeness because of how healthy you're making it certainly sound. I got to ask you about this huge story, which is one of those stories that seems like it'll just be, one day in the news. And I'm sure there'll be a few deep dives on it over the next 48 hours on cable news and maybe a few good articles about it, but then it'll kind of go away. But it's a story that will affect us, our kids, and their kids. It's Leonard Leo, the Thanos of the Republican Party, the man who gave us all kinds of crazy right-wing Christian fascist judges, including 3 on the Supreme Court, self-selected them. He just got almost $2 billion to spend however he likes. What do you know about the guy who gave him the money, and what do you think about how important this issue is? Because like I said, this is going to reverberate for generations, but I feel like it'll only be a few days' story.
It should be the major story. It's an old adage of journalism, follow the money. And a lot of people don't know who this gentleman is, Leonard. But this guy, Leo Leonard, is the kingmaker for Republicans. He's the guy who connects a lot of the big money to these right-wing extremists to pack the courts, right? He's against climate change in the sense that he's pro-climate change. He
helped fund the Heartland Institute. The guy who gave him the money, the leading anti-science, anti-climate change think tank is the Heartland Institute. And the guy who gave Leonard Leo the money funded a lot of that, is my understanding. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. Federalist Society, climate change denialism, cracking down on women's rights, this regressive type of Supreme Court where they can pack the courts and basically use the courts to get around legislation and the majority, right? So this is the guy. This
also
is
hates Muslims,
hates women, hates progress. Basically, the most anti-woke person on earth. The person who gave him this $1.3 billion gift, and just amazing how they can use and abuse the financial instruments to hide, right, the donors, right? They come up with all these ways to use dark money to funnel it into their right-wing agenda, so you can't trace it. You can't trace the donors to protect the donors, but also so they don't have to pay taxes on it. It's amazing. The rich get away with everything because they're the ones who create and control the system, which is why, when we were growing up, I remember you can't say this with Gen Z anymore. When we were growing up, you can say this with millennials, that there's only 2 things certain in life: death and taxes. If you say they're Gen Z, like, what are you talking about? The rich don't pay taxes. And so through this tax scheme, they got this Chicago businessman, Barry Said, to give $1.3 billion to this guy, Leo Leonard, who's this Republican kingmaker with this extremist agenda. This $1.3 billion will fund the next 20 years of regressive politics in America, dark money. You don't know where it's going to go through. And Barry Said also, I know his name because he was the guy who gave $18 million, again, through dark money funneling, through, I believe it was the Donors Capital Fund years ago, to this group called Clarion Fund, right? Yeah. Clarion Fund is this hardcore anti-Muslim outfit in New York, which created this anti-Muslim documentary called Obsession. Radical Islam's war with America came out in 2005. And with the $18 million they got from the same Chicago businessman who gave $1.3 billion to Leo, they sent millions of copies of this DVD to swing states right before the 2008 election. Just imagine the amount of money and resources.
Very effective. Those who put the DVD.
Imagine what these guys are going to do. Imagine what these guys are going to do as climate change is ravaging the earth, as the Supreme Court extremists are taking away our fundamental rights. This is extremely dangerous. And even in the New York Times article that you're citing, they did not do a deep dive into how dangerous this guy's politics are and where these tentacles really go. It's like one paragraph. And I'm like, dude, that's the story. You missed the story.
Well, hopefully they'll follow up on that one and do a deeper dive, or at least something in the op-ed section. Finally, I want to ask you about the media. There's been a lot of talk about what's going on over at CNN, our old employer. You worked there. I worked there. Then after I worked there, you worked there. And neither of us work there now. But a lot is changing there. They got rid of Brian Stelter. I'm never a big fan of him as a person, but I like the idea of the show and a lot of what he did. He's just always a weird dick to me. One time I was in Vegas at CES. Consumer Electronics Show. I was doing a corporate gig out there, and he tweeted, "Anybody at CES want to grab coffee?" And I was like, "Hey, man, I'd love to." This was years ago. And he just ignored me. And then started
he's like that with me also.
Oh, right. Yeah. Started being nice to me when my profile went up, and then whatever. Not anymore. Anyway, I like this tweet that a lot of people are talking about the takeover at CNN, and they're saying that a very conservative libertarian guy, John Malone, who owns a majority stake in the company that owns the company, I guess, somehow had something to do with it, or he's making editorial choices. He's why Stelter's leaving and others as well. And Jay Rosen tweeted, a down the middle programmatically both sides news channel is not going to be less partisan. And I should have set that up better. A lot of people are saying that, Malone and others want a less partisan network. Jay Rosen writes, there'll be more partisan claims thrown about and a weaker effort to check them because that would be read as opinionated. And he linked to a piece. But your take on this. This is something I've been railing on for years. What is partisan? What is black and white? What is objective? What is truth? What do you make of these types of arguments about where CNN was at, which was never on the Overton window that I thought it should be on? I always thought they were way more corporate news, a painfully objective down the middle, while everybody else was like, oh, they're Clinton News Network and they're liberal. What are your thoughts about what's happening there and what that criticism of partisan news gets wrong?
How do you both sides fascism?
Yeah,
that's my question.
Yeah,
the CEO of Discovery, David Zaslav, there's a merger right between HBO and Discovery. Zaslav has said, according to Politico, a couple of days ago, that he wants CNN to be a network for both Republicans and Democrats. Chris Light, the man who has replaced the man who's replaced Zucker, comes from Colbert Report, and reports have recently said that he's went to DC and trying to court Democrats, but mostly Republicans, asking them how they can, do better in their coverage. First and foremost, why is a news organization asking elected officials how they should cover the news? Why don't you just cover the news? Number one. And number two, the fact that Zaslav says this, well, why are you trying to be a house for a political party and a right-wing movement that actively calls your employees and journalists enemy of the people? And as we've seen in the past 5 years, thanks to Trump targeting CNN, your employees have come under threat. You had to literally have the employees leave your New York office because there were death threats. Remember that?
I remember talking to Mark, I don't think he'll mind me saying, Mark Preston that day. Yeah. And other people at CNN, John Avalon.
And Caesar Sayak, the man who said he was radicalized by Fox News, who had a hit list which matched Donald Trump's media enemies, and he sent pipe bombs. Where did he send the pipe bomb to? CNN. So you are now enabling and giving a platform to the right-wing ecosystem that sees you as the enemy of the people, and individuals in that system who have tried to kill your employees for the sake of ratings and profit. What liberal media? What liberal media? CBS, President, we've talked about this on your show, has actively courted Republicans and hired Mick Mulvaney because he believes that Republicans will take the House and they want to court right-wing power. Mark Zuckerberg secretly met with Donald Trump to court and cozy up to power. And now you have CNN cozying up to Republicans, trying to win over a base that has left them. What they don't realize is no matter how much you suck up to fascists, right, fascists will betray you. Yep. No matter how much New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, Facebook, MSNBC has tried to suck up to these people in this 5 years, I'll give you the last 5 years. They hate you. They see you as the enemy. No matter what you do to bend the knee, they want to put their thumb over you and crush you. Steve Bannon says that you are the enemy. He says the media is the enemy, not the Democrats, which is why he sees the media as the battleground to win over the hearts and minds. So this is a cynical, short-term move by individuals who see profit and ratings as the sole purpose of a corporate news institution. And what will happen is that truth will suffer, accountability will suffer, democracy will suffer, and you will give a platform to white supremacists, climate change denialists, and people who promote the big lie. And what we've seen, the data has shown that when you give a platform, a both sides equal platform to say, I don't know, 99% of scientists who believe in climate change and the 1% who doesn't, you know who it helps? Climate change denialism, because the people say, oh, both sides are the same. Both sides are equal. If both sides weren't equal, they wouldn't be on CNN. Right. So it increases anti-vaxxers, it increases disinformation, it increases white supremacy. And for what? For profit. And you're enabling the monster who will turn around and kill you. And you won't even get the ratings. What liberal media?
And furthermore, I don't even understand. That's such a great rant. I don't even understand.
Thank you for giving me time to rant.
Well, I love it. What Republicans stand for other than culture war issues. I mean, I'm trying to think of a policy we used to argue back in the day on my old show. And certainly one issue that we argued all the time. I argued with a lot of liberal Democrats about this, too. But I was, I'm proud to say, always on the right side of the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war, which was against it. And we would argue vehemently about the human rights, the war crimes, torture, all of it, policy type stuff, in that case, foreign policy. Certainly we argued about economic policy, debt and deficit, spending and so on. Now the Republican Party has no policies. Meanwhile, Democrats passed one of the most important policies in the history of Congress or the United States government last week and constantly working on actual things that make people's lives better. Meanwhile, they're on the right there railing about trans people. They're railing about late, third trimester abortion. They're anti-vax. They're against a bunch of things.
Conspiracy theories, man. White supremacist conspiracy theories.
Exactly. So how do you cater to them if you don't engage in that stuff?
Well, how about this? Here, I did this tweet and let me know your thoughts about this. Suppose there's a 2023, right? There's an afternoon show, CNN anchor doing their job. They do both sides coverage. You have two guests. Suppose they have you on. And suppose they have, Elise Stefanik or maybe Carrie Lake, the nut running for governor.
Sounds like a hell of a booking for me.
Oh, yeah. An amazing booking for you. And suppose they say George Soros is using his money to fund the deep state. And the anchor will be like, wait, are you saying that? Wait, are you saying that Jews have power and money and controlling the media to replace white people? No, I didn't say that. I just said George Soros and other globalists are using their money to fund the deep state. Oh, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, what should I say then? I'm on that panel.
Well, yeah. You should say, why are you giving a platform for white supremacist conspiracy theories and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that have radicalized individuals to commit acts of terrorism in America? This is the same theory that the terrorists used to kill 10 black people in Buffalo.
Wait, is my mic still on? Wait, I'm not even on the platform. I just criticized the actual network and now I'm gone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
But like, Pete, you think I'm exaggerating. That's what you're going to get.
No, I don't. No,
And how else will a CNN anchor, what is it going to say? Do you mean that Jews control America? Are you repeating an anti-Semitic conspiracy protocols of the elders of Zion? Oh, no. I'm just saying that globalists like Soros do. Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming. We'll love to have you on next week.
Yeah, the new CNN boss is down there trying to, curry favor with Republicans. But of course, the truth is Republicans won't go on CNN, not because CNN is liberal. I still don't think that that's the case, but because they're going to have to answer not even hard questions, just questions. And at this point, Ron DeSantis has, I think, said, as people have said, and others have said, they would never go on any network that is not favorable to their interests. And, talk about the major news, ABC and NBC. I guess those are all liberal as well. I mean, there are pretty straightforward questions that you have to ask a guest. In this case, a Republican guest. They don't want to be asked those questions. And that's the strategy. Ron Johnson doesn't want to go answer any questions about the shit he did. They don't want to be on these networks. So there's nothing that you can do to curry favor with them.
Last thing I'll say is look how Fox News is not right wing enough for the right wing base now.
Yes.
There's a reason why you have Newsmax, One American News, and podcasts, and 4chan and 8chan, because Fox is not right wing enough. If Fox is not right wing enough for the right wing base, and the base hates you, what do you gain from watering down your product and catering to a dangerous base that is against media, against democracy, and against your own journalists? You won't get anything. And this is why it's so dangerous. And I think CNN is making a huge miscalculation, and which is why I want a media institution to step up and be unapologetically woke. And I think they will find, it's an Air America, but with money. And I think Air America was ahead of its time, but I think enough people now are aligned with its mission, its politics, that if you have a billionaire come in and say, we're unapologetically woke, and we're going to just report the news, and we're going to call out power, and when Democrats F up, we're going to call them out, and we're going to be against fascism, and we don't care.
Well, there's a lot of that stuff happening now on YouTube and podcasting and other places amongst liberal folks like us. So, but still not nearly enough, I think, to make an impact. Although it's harder to make an impact if you're not constantly trying to scare the shit out of people with bullshit. It's just it's a harder game to play when you're going to be like us, I guess. All right, last question. You kids went back to school? You're tweeting about this? Yes? How are you feeling? You okay?
First day, man. My kids went to school for the first time because they were virtual learning for the past 2 years. So today was the first day of school. Dropped them off. Prayed to God that they wouldn't be bullied or bully anyone else. Kids came back happy. Said they got compliments on their shoes. Already a win. It's looking good. And also I will say this. And I tweeted this. I couldn't help it, because I had to be honest. One of my main prayers and fears and thoughts and hopes as I dropped them off was, please God, let there not be a mass shooting, which just was such an absurd. And as I was having this thought, I'm like, this is not a normal thought. Oh. And then it infuriated me that I'm having this thought as an American parent, that we're so used to it. And then it infuriated me that we had fire drills, but my kids are going to have shooting drills.
Yeah. The parents, a lot of parents, we do this, take the first day of school picture, and some smart but sick humored person took a picture of their child in a helmet, like a military helmet and flak jacket. Like first day of school. Man.
On point. I mean, you need that dark humor to reflect the dark reality. We care more about guns than kids in this country. And so, and the fun, and I told my wife this, she goes, yeah, I had the same fear, but honestly, it's like Russian roulette. No matter how safe you are, no one's safe. No matter what community you're in, doesn't matter. Red state, blue state, doesn't matter.
Do you have flashbacks this time of year because you were a husky brown kid and you were bullied because of those things?
Of course, bro. That's why that's why I married my wife. Bring everything full circle. Like my wife's like, Ibrahim is handsome and he doesn't know how handsome he is, and he's a sweet boy. He'll be fine. And Nusayba's like pretty and she's got a good personality. So I'm not worried about them. I just hope they don't become bullies. And I'm like, I just hope they don't get bullied. That's all I care about. and then the fact that they came back and they have friends and they're smiling and
that's
someone
great.
gave them compliments. And I'm like, dude, this is such a different trajectory than me. I think the kids will be okay.
Unfortunately, they have an "In God We Trust" sign in their school now. So no, that's Texas.
Yeah. I try singing "Allah We Trust." And I'm like, you keep quiet about that. Ibrahim.
Yeah, exactly. That's a curious, mischievous young people need to make sure they know what to do with those signs when they start appearing.
Allah and Sharia for the home, my son.
Wajahat Ali, as always, my pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
All right. Yes, I love that man, and I love talking to him, and it was, he just never misses. So good. I hope you listened to both of my conversations, the almost hour and a half that I had for you today. I hope you appreciated it. I love doing it for you, and I've got a lot more great guests coming up this week, as I mentioned earlier. And I hope to see you at our hangout. Hopefully you're a stand-up subscriber. If you're not, really do yourself a favor. Pay as little as $5 or as much as $200, whatever you want to pay a month, whatever you can pay, however much you get out of it. But you get a lot more if you decide to join us in our kind of our community. It's just been such an unbelievable growth and so many amazing connections have been made, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it. So check us out on Thursday nights. Tomorrow night we'll do a hangout live virtually, as we do almost every Thursday at 8. The Discord platform is always open for anybody to chat 24/7. Lots of great stuff going on in there as always. All right, that's it all from me. I look forward to talking tomorrow. John Carroll going to sing us out as he does every day. Go buy this song on johncarroll.org right now. Take it away, brother.
To let in some light, you gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand up.